you go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am Linda Wenklikowski from our Foundation Board of Directors and one of this year's co-chairs, along with my partner in pink, Lori Nolan. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the Power of Pink Women's Wellness Conference. And thank you so much for joining us virtually this year. We were so very close last year, not close enough, having to cancel just 1 week prior to the event. But all of our sponsors and many of our ticket holders stuck with us. And we are so thankful for that. We are really, truly grateful. Even our original lineup of speakers is still the same, miraculously, including Marilu Henner, who has been extremely gracious with her time in adjusting to these changes. And because we are virtual, many more of you are able to join us today. So that's a good thing. These events do not happen without a lot of work from a lot of people. We have had a dedicated and devoted committee that really gathered around us and banded together this whole past year, changing gears and adapting to make this virtual day a success. We are extremely grateful for their support. And we'd also want to thank Jan Marie Perry and Emily Tan from the Foundation Office that provided all this behind the scenes magic today. And while we were unable to be physically together in the lovely ballroom with the flowers and the linens, we hope that you will still enjoy your time here together. We have wonderful speakers, door prizes, raffles, and more. And we hope that you're all wearing pink out there today. Towards the end of the event, we're going to try to see if we can get capture, maybe a screen capture of all of you. So stay tuned for that. To get us started, I would like to introduce our Chief Mission Integration Officer, Jennifer Kozakowski.
Thank you, Linda. Let us just take a moment, take a deep breath, let it out, quiet and still ourselves, and remember that we are in our healing God's presence always. Gracious and loving God, we begin this gathering with your grace. We thank you for the blessing of health and wealth that enables us to celebrate this day. Healing and compassionate God, you invite all who are burdened to come to you. May your healing touch be felt by those gathered here today. Touch their souls with your compassion for others. Touch their hearts with your courage and infinite love for all. Touch their minds with your wisdom that they may always proclaim your praise. Teach them to reach out to you in their need and anoint them with your self-care today and always. Bring them health and wellness in body, mind, and spirit that they may serve you with all their strength and passion. Most loving and provident one, touch gently these lives which you have created and gathered here in celebration, now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's always nice to start with a lovely inspiration like that. And now for just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. Throughout the program today, if you have any questions or need assistance, please use the chat feature to ask, and someone on our great team here will get back to you. Please keep yourself on mute during the presentations to ensure everyone can hear clearly. I think everyone knows the drill since we've been Zooming for over a year now, but just as a reminder. We have an amazing lineup of speakers for you today, and you will be hearing from Cathi Shultz, motivational speaker and author of Clandestiny, Little Girl Lost, Baby Boy Found. Lindsey Burrell, one of our own ICU nurses and a patient care advocate at Little Company of Mary. Dr. Anita Sircar, our infectious disease specialist and advisor on the COVID task force. And someone we all know very well, our keynote speaker, Marilu Henner, New York Times best-selling author, memory expert, and star of stage, screen, and television, including some of your favorite Hallmark movies. We're all very familiar with Hallmark movies after this pandemic year. If you have any questions for any of our speakers, please post them in the chat box and we will try our best to get them answered as time allows. And you can share the fun today by posting on social media with the hashtag PLCM pop. So that should be on the screen now for you to see, I hope. Please be sure to check out our fun and fabulous raffle packages. You know from years past, if you attended the conference, they're really wonderful and a lot of fun. So they're available if you'd like to get some raffle tickets. And we are selling tickets online this year, and the link will be posted in the chat box. Each package is valued at over $1,200, and tickets are just $25 each, or 5 tickets for $100. We will be selling the tickets until about 12:20 this afternoon, just before our keynote speaker, Marilu, begins. And we will draw the winners after her presentation. You do not have to be online to win, but it's a lot more fun if you are, and we hope you'll stay with the program. And then we have also another favorite, our wonderful boutique. We encourage you to shop at our amazing pop-up boutique. It's virtual this year, but just as you're very good at Zooming, you're probably very good at online shopping. So that's available for you. And we have some very wonderful local artisans and female-owned businesses with us today. People who, vendors and special people who've stayed with us this year and have been supporters of Power of Pink for many, many years. Anyway, it's a great opportunity to do a little shopping for Mother's Day or graduation gifts, or maybe a little something for yourself. You might deserve a treat today. So to start us off, several businesses have given us door prizes for today. Everyone attending the event for whom we have an email address has been entered into the drawing to win. So let's see who wins the first couple of prizes.
Cynthia Sanders.
Okay, our first winner today is Cynthia Sanders. We're spinning again. Takes a little longer to do door prizes virtually.
Beth Kiesel.
Beth Kiesel is our second winner.
Deborah Benitez.
Deborah Benitez is our third winner today. So the foundation office will be contacting you about picking up your prizes. Congratulations, lady. The proceeds of today's event benefits the Women and Children's Services at Providence Little Company of Mary Medical Centers in San Pedro and Torrance. Many of you in this room have received care from the incredible team of doctors, nurses, and other caregivers at Little Company. By being here today, you are helping our hospital to provide the very best care for our entire community and for us today and for the future generations. Thank you. A special thank you to many of our generous sponsors. We'd like to specifically mention our Diamond Jubilee, Hot Pink, Rose, and Magenta sponsors, each who contributed at least $10,000 to today's event. And those are probably, I hope, going to be shown on your screen. It's LA Care Health Plan, Little Company of Mary Sisters, the USA region, and our very dear own Sister Terrence Landini, the Senefani family, the Jacqueline Glass family, the Roz Halikas family, Joan Harris and her family, the Chuck Miller family, Ginny and Dr. Kent Shoji, and the emergency physicians of Providence Little Company of Mary Torrance. And I would just like to make one note about Dr. Shoji's sponsor. He was with us yesterday stuffing all the conference bags, which hopefully all of you have received. And I'd just like to thank him for that, because he's not only a great ER doctor, he's just a great person. So, okay, I'm going to introduce my co-chair, Lori Nolan.
Thank you, Linda. We are so excited to be here today, and we're so appreciative of all of you who are online with us and stuck with us over the last year, because as you know, we got to a week beforehand and we had to cancel. But virtually every sponsor and the majority of those of you who bought tickets to actually be in the luncheon showed up today. And we are so very grateful for your support. What I want to do right now is draw your attention to this lovely scarf that I'm wearing. It is a Power Pink shawl. Zala Moon, who is one of our vendors, it has graciously made these for us. It's a signature keepsake wrap specifically for Power Pink in a Power Pink color. And I'm going to ask Michelle Terry from Zala Moon to come up and demonstrate just how versatile these wraps are.
Thank you. Yes, these, we like to call them versatile infinity shawls, travel shawls. You can do whatever you want with these. And it literally starts better. It literally starts as simple as this. If you do nothing more, but just leave it as a scarf, you already have a fashionable, fun pink scarf. But to get it started, you just take your clasp. You have to bear with me a moment here. This is the hardest part of the whole shawl, just lining these up and snapping them in. And what some people even do is you can keep them snapped and you can just put them on and off your head so you don't have to worry with unsnapping it or snapping them back in. But I like to use this look under a jacket or a blazer so that way you have a cute little vest automatically. For date night, or if you want to do something a little more fun and flirty, all you have to do is take your ends, go behind your back, make a little knot, and now you just made a super cute little halter top. If you're in the office or if you're on date night and it's cold with the button snapped, all you do, throw it over your shoulders. Now this is our signature look. This is our cape. This is how a lot of people like to wear it. But what I like to do is simply turn it to the side. You have your buttons down your arm. And now it's just a little more fun. It has a lot of movement. It's really nice. But wait, there's more. Keep turning it. So now your back has become your front. You have a little cowl neck right here. And all your button details go down your spine. And once again, you just find your ends. You make a quick little knot. And now you just made yourself a cute little tunic top. But since we all like to travel, especially now that things are opening back up, you just rip off your buttons. You can take it to the side. It's completely adjustable. You find where it fits you. You keep it to the side. You just made a sarong for the pool, for the beach, wherever you're going. Or since music and concerts and festivals are coming back, you can take it down the middle. You have to do all the buttons, which I will spare you, but you just line them all up again. And now you just made yourself a very fashionable high-low skirt that you can wear anywhere. Machine washable, tumble dry low. I like to hang mine up just to keep it extra fresh. And then when you're done and you're ready to go, you take it and you fold it and you roll it. You keep it in your purse. You keep it in your office. You keep it in your desk, in your car. And it is that simple. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for showing us these wonderful infinity shawls.
Marilu, spiritual
Oops.
care. And I
I'm sorry, we have to
here
pause just for a moment.
a small book called The Gentle Weapon. O God of many names, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah. It has taken me time, but I'm finally learning to trust you. When I called, you answered. When I cried, you sent relief. When I was in need, you came through. You are there for me in every instance. I need only look, think, and understand. And I can always find you. There you are, always ready to help. Thank you, God, for waiting for me to catch up with you. And tonight at 6:30, I want to remind staff that we're having a stand-in, which is really a stand with our Asian brothers and sisters who have been the object of hate crimes, so as to have them know in the way we witness that we are with them and for them. Take good care and have a blessed day.
So one of the unique challenges of changing our venue is that we will get overhead calls during this, and we have our leaders from the emergency department here. So if you hear a code stroke, hopefully you don't have to leave us. So again, I just wanted to shout out to Laura O'Donnell, who lives in the area, female business owned company, Zala Moon. And again, their website is available on our website. They are giving 20% back of their profits for anything you purchase from their website. But if you would like to purchase one of these infinity wraps for a donation of $40 on our website, we will get in touch with you as to how to come get it. Or if we need to, we can send it to you. But if you can come pick it up, we'll make that happen. We really encourage you to get these. The sponsors and those of you who did purchase your tickets last year already received the bags within minutes. So we hope you enjoy. So now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Cathi Shultz. I have known Cathi for at least 40 years or so. We're not that old. Her mom was a nurse at what was then known as San Pedro Peninsula Hospital. And I was just eager to start my nursing career and gravitated towards them. And Cathy's sister, her younger sister, Susie, and I were really good friends. Susie was in my wedding. I was in Susie's wedding. Cathi sang at my wedding. Cathi and I led youth choirs together. And I was always welcomed as part of her family. They're just a wonderful, wonderful family, and they welcomed me with open arms. But I never knew that Cathi was keeping a secret all that time. And it is really a testament to her faith, her loving husband that has allowed her to feel loved and supported, her belief in God's grace that allowed her to turn this secret into a blessing and an inspirational story to help other women who find out that secrets do not or should not always stay hidden. So, Cathi.
Thank you, Lori. It's kind of unfair to make me get to the edge of tears before I come up, but we'll go for it. I'm really, really thankful to be here today. I know most of you have been waiting for a year for this to happen. I've actually been waiting 2 years for it because it was February of 2019 when I was asked if I would speak at this event, and I was ready to go last year. Didn't happen, so here we are. I want you to pretend with me, if you would. I told my husband this morning, I think maybe I'm designed for living rooms and not the stage. But if we could pretend together that we're all in a living room, cozy, comfortable chairs, couches, everybody with their own beverage of choice, because what I want to do today is not so much a speech. I want to share a part of my life, and I want to share my heart with you. And that's a more comfortable way to do this. As I do that, it will become fairly clear to you what the subject of my talk is. The subject is choices. And I've made some in my life that greatly impacted my life and the lives of others. I think my first choice in the category of life-changing things happened when I was just tiny, and it must have been a subliminal thing. I decided at some point early on that I was going to always appear to be happy. It was a safety thing in some ways, but you can imagine that what that really meant was I was stuffing any negative emotion, any fear, any pain, any kind of emotional trauma, I stuffed, and I got very, very good at it. I think my second choice, and probably the most important choice I ever made, was at the age of 14, when I asked Jesus to come into my heart. That has changed me and kept me steady for a lot of years. So right now I'm going to give you an overview of my book, Clandestiny. And I'm going to do it by giving you what's called an elevator speech. An elevator speech is designed to get a publisher or an agent to talk to you about your book in the time it would take you to take an elevator ride with them. So this is how this goes. At 16, I fell in love. I'm not totally positive that falling in love is a choice. I'm still working on that one. At 18, I was pregnant. At 19, on December 31st, 1972, as an unwed mother, I gave birth to a baby boy. 2 weeks later, the baby's father and I met together and signed adoption papers to place him in a closed adoption. And then we went our separate ways. 10 months later, we ran into each other again and began dating again, secretly. 6 years after that, in 1979, we got married. In 1981, we had a son. In 1984, we had our first daughter. In 1987, we had our second daughter and last child. 13 years later, on June 6th, year 2000, there was a letter in the mail. Let's flesh that out just a little bit. Obviously, unprotected sex at the age of 18 was not a wise choice. There were still choices I had after I discovered I was pregnant, but they weren't as good as the choice to not get pregnant would have been. So let's just say that when my parents discovered I was pregnant, they were not really happy about it. They kind of fell apart, actually. My father was very stoic. He was very quiet, reserved gentleman. My mother, not so much. And the drama ensued quickly and aggressively. They did not want me to get married. They were positive that I would ruin my life if I did. All I wanted to do was get married and raise this child. I was 18, and I don't know about you, but I grew up on Disney movies. Anybody else? It should have a happy ending, right? It was so dramatic in my house that we chose to send me to Alabama to some friends to help me try to make a decision without all the arguing and the clamor and the drama. My mother and my father both wanted to keep everything a secret. They didn't want anyone to know I was pregnant. They didn't want anyone to know where I was. They didn't even tell my little sister where I was. In Alabama, it was a blessing to be there because the woman in the house with me was willing to be a sounding board, but she was not emotionally involved. And so I could say and do anything that I felt for maybe the first time in my life. What I decided to do was give the baby up for adoption. So I went and researched. In Alabama at that time, the only way you could place a baby for adoption was through the state. So if I gave my child up, he would become a ward of the state. I was not okay with that. So I called my parents. I told them I wanted to do the adoption road and asked them to do some research. They found an organization in Southern California that came alongside women in my position and helped them go whatever path they wanted to go. They would place me with a family who was willing to make sure I made all my doctor's appointments, who was willing to take me to the hospital, willing to house me and feed me. And I flew back from Alabama. My parents picked me up at the airport. They took me out to these people's house. They dropped me off. That was the second week of November. And I was with them until I went into labor. They dropped, the gentleman who was the father of the home dropped me at the hospital, and I was there alone to have a baby. No training, no information, childbirth classes weren't a thing. And I went through a medical model of that time of birth. After we signed those adoption papers, went our separate ways, got back together, you might be able to guess what happened next. I came up pregnant again. And the fear, the terror, the desperation of that for both of us was overwhelming. And we did something that nobody should ever do. Do not make a life choice when you're desperate. It will not turn out well. Our life choice was to have an abortion. It had just become legal in the state of California, and that's the road we took. That might have been bad enough. The second choice we made was to keep it a secret, never to tell anybody. We honestly didn't even talk about it to each other. You know, Søren Kierkegaard has a quote that says, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. So we chose in 1979 to get married. It was a good choice. It was a very good choice. We celebrated our 41st anniversary last October. So let me tell you a little bit about that letter in the mail that we received on that June morning. Our 3 kids and Steve and I had been on an outing all day, family outing, gone all day, got home. My kids love each other. Sometimes they don't like each other very much. So after spending all day together, they split in 3 different directions into the house. Steve went to put gas in the car. I went out to get the mail. I walked back in, and if you're like me, you sort mail. There's a pile for him, a pile for you, and a pile for the trash can. So I was going through it. There was a little business-sized letter and typed address, little handwritten note down in the side, personal and confidential. I opened it up and began to read, and this is what I read. I'm not quite sure how to approach this, and this is not easy for me, so please be patient. At that point, I almost threw it away. We'd been getting requests for funds from young people who were starting out, and I thought it was one of those, but something kept me reading. 28 years ago this December, you gave me a gift I can never repay. But over the past 10 years, I have found myself looking, searching for a history I have never known. And so now I'm sending this letter in the hopes of establishing some line of communication. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mark Gerlach. I was born in the Methodist Hospital in Arcadia on December 31st, 1972. That's as far as I got. And the tears started, and the heart pounding started, and the prayer started, Lord, please keep my children upstairs. They didn't know anything about their brother. We had never mentioned him. We had never talked about him. So now we had a whole set of new choices to make. First choice, obviously, telling our kids about their sibling. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. That following Saturday, we sat down with them and we told them what had happened. 3 different kids, 3 different responses. The oldest one, our son, began to say, I could have grown up with a brother. I always wanted a brother. I could have grown up with a brother. I finally had to look at him and say, Evan, don't go there. If we had gotten married and raised this child, he's 9 years older than you are. Chances are I would have been done having kids before you ever were conceived. You might not be here. Our middle child, our daughter, cried immediately, was her go-to thing right then. And she began to say, you should have told us. Why didn't you tell us? I don't even know who you are. You're not my parents. And it was a never-ending loop. The youngest one, God bless her, our wild child, she sat and looked at me for a minute and said, can I write him a letter? And I said, of course. And she said, cool. Can I go play video games now? Sure, go ahead. But before you leave, you 3 need to know that your dad and I are ready to answer any questions that you have. You can come to us anytime for anything. Any questions that you have, we will talk to you and we will be honest. We will tell you the truth. They did pretty well with it, actually. It was kind of surprising. Then we had to tell the rest of the family. My mom cried. My dad said, I'm so glad. Steve's mom cried. Now, let me just say, Steve's mom, if you gave her a sentimental birthday card, she cried. So, but Steve's dad was a different story. He wanted to know if we were going to have a DNA check to make sure that he was actually ours. But they did end up accepting him. Then we got to make the first meeting. Do you know what it's like to watch a 6'5" man climb out of a car, walk around it, open the door, and help his wife out, who was pregnant with their first child, and realize as he walks towards you and wraps his arms around you, this is my son. And then to watch us swap places and him to walk across toward his dad. And as I was hugging his wife, he stuck out his hand to his birth father. And my husband grabbed his hand and said, "No way," and pulled him in for a hug. So that was our first meeting. We had time to sit and talk, chat, get to know each other. They met their siblings. You have to understand, my first son, Mark, grew up as an only child. He didn't have any siblings, and his mom was not the dream adoptive mother that I had hoped for. He had a hard life, and he took the time and the emotional energy, and he sat and he wrote his side of the story. So when you read Clandestiny, you will find chapters where Mark and I interspersed our writing. He stood up with his brother when his brother got married. He ended up working for my husband. They ended up moving from Bakersfield, where they had lived, down into our area, and they gave us 3 beautiful grandchildren. That grandbaby she was expecting is now over 20 years old. Well, maybe the biggest choice I had to make after all of this happened was writing the book. If anybody ever tells you you should write a book, I can bet 98% sure they have never written one. I had people tell me every time I told this story, and I told it a lot, every time I told this story, I had at least one person say to me, "You need to write a book." And I would very graciously smile and nod and think to myself, ain't no way. But then God began to nudge me. And then when the nudging didn't work, he began to push me. And I finally surrendered and made the choice to write the book. It took me 8 years. It was 8 years of digging up past secrets, past hurts, finding out things I didn't know. My husband and I, for the first time, talked about those times in our lives and the things he went through that I didn't know anything about. So that was the best choice I've ever made, to write that book. And I knew going in, nobody may ever read this book except my family. But I didn't care. I needed to do it. There was something inside me. This is what the reasons that it has been the best thing. Secrets were revealed, so many secrets. The pain was brought to the surface, and we were able to talk about it and deal with it. Communication as a couple, as a family, even with our friends, has improved. And I've been told that reading the book has helped some other people deal with some of the things in their past. None of this would have happened without God's grace. There's no way. We had made a pact never to find that little boy. When we signed those adoption papers, we promised ourselves we would not interfere in his life. We had given up. We thought that when he was 18, he might show up. When he was 21, he might show up. When he was 25, he might show up. He waited till he was 27. And we had put it to bed, literally had a conversation. We're putting this to bed. It's in God's hands. And it was 6 months later that a letter arrived. I know that none of this would be happening none of it would have happened without God stepping in. I know that I am here talking to you right now strictly by the grace of God. There's no other reason. So maybe for some of you, it's brought some life choices of yours to mind. Maybe there's some secrets that have been haunting you. Here are some of the things I learned through this journey. When I kept my secrets secret, they festered inside me. I think the pain was actually worse pulling them out 20 years later than it would have been if I had dealt with them immediately. But when I did bring them into the light, the shame they had created lost its power. Once it's out there, nobody can hold it against you. When I surrendered myself and my secrets to God, he began to use them and use them powerfully. And the biggest one of all, I always have a choice. In every situation, every day, every moment, I have choices to make. Sometimes it's just whether my attitude is going to be good or not, but there are always choices. And my prayer is that listening to me will help you make some choices that'll benefit your life. Thank you.
Okay, we'll both cry if we. So again, I want to say that it's just a testament to God and his grace that allows us to make mistakes when we're young and learn from them. And Cathy's faith and her family, it's just so interesting when I look back, because again, I was at her house all the time, and for a time, Cathi was just gone. Her parents never said anything. Yeah, Cathy's away. She's just in where was it? Alabama. Yeah, just in Alabama. And then, one day she's back. But it was just kind of the norm. And again, a shout out to her loving husband, and her family just stood by her and supported her through all of this. So just a remarkable story. And I want you to know, we're going to put in the chat box, there is a link to Cathy's website. And any of you who didn't, that are on today and would like to get a copy of her book, if you use the link on the website, you can get a free copy. Cathi has graciously offered that, as well as provided books for all of our sponsors. So are there any questions in the chat box at this time? No? I would encourage you to reach out to Cathi directly from her website.
Please do.
Yeah, some of those questions may be more personal than you want to have answered here.
Yeah.
She's just a wonderful resource and would be happy to talk with you. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'm going to cry again. The next speaker is my friend, fellow colleague, nurse, Lindsey Burrell. She is another woman that has a remarkable and inspirational story. Most of us, when we're a patient and we're a caregiver, have certain people that we would want to care for us, because we just see in them something that is unique, something that is extremely compassionate and caring. And that is Lindsey. It just exudes from who she is. You can tell she was born to be a nurse, even though she went a little different direction at first. But she is truly just a remarkable woman. And she now uses her experience as an ICU nurse to teach other nurses. So that's just a remarkable gift that she has. I was with her when she gave birth to her second son. It was just a really special time. She is extremely, as I said, caring and compassionate, but When you're an expert at care on the bedside and all of a sudden you have to become the patient, it changes your perspective. And all the things that you have dealt with in helping other people now becomes personal to you. And so I'm going to invite Lindsey up here to speak about her story and how she continues to advocate for everyone around her. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I feel so honored to be speaking alongside 3 other very successful and motivating women. Their stories, as you will find, are truly inspiring. A New York Times bestselling author, star of stage and screen, a motivational speaker and accomplished author, and an infectious disease specialist, arguably one of the most influential women of the year within our hospital. Each of us tell a story of strength and perseverance, a moment in time in which we as women rose up and conquered the absolute impossible. As Lori mentioned, I'm Lindsey Burrell. I'm a mom, wife, critical care nurse, educator, lover of life, and thanks to the recent pandemic, I'm a housekeeper and homeschool teacher by day, but in my kids' eyes, a Michelin top-rated sushi chef by night. I'm also an author. No, not a New York Times bestselling author, or even a published author. But I'm the author of the most important story one could write. My story, my life. I've had the honor of writing each word, page by page, chapter by chapter. Well, as most of my friends and family would agree, it's been filled with plenty of drama, ups and downs, at times thrilling page-turning moments, and even some moments where the reader would probably reach in and ask me, why? What are you doing? But see, here's the thing. Each of us here are authors of our own lives. Up to this point, you have each spent a significant amount of time writing and editing the most inspiring stories with beautiful beginnings and ongoing chapters that tell of challenges followed by triumph. But have you ever contemplated how the last few pages of your story will read? What if I told you that you have the ability to write the last chapter of your life, up to the last few pages, to the last words? Well, I'm here today to tell you that yes, this is possible. You are the author of your own lives, the beginning, middle, and the end. I know what you're thinking. What's a 39-year-old here talking about end of life? Well, for some reference, let's skip ahead to page 205 of my novel. At 34, I had my life figured out. Married with a new baby boy, I had the job of my dreams, a beautiful home, a supportive, close-knit family, and my health, or so I thought. On August 12th, 2016, I walked into my cardiologist's office for a routine checkup, and my whole life changed. After years of shortness of breath and chest pain, I was diagnosed with severe mitral valve regurgitation and was told I would need open heart surgery. My first thought was, me? How could that be? I'm 34 years old. I'd worked out my whole life, and to most, I was the walking image of healthy and fit. Unfortunately, cardiac disease doesn't care about age or physical attributes, and it definitely doesn't have any consideration for how perfect life seems to be at that moment. With a 5-month-old in my arms and my husband by my side, I was faced with the devastating reality that my life was everything but in control. For the months that followed, I put my health into the hands of some of the best nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants, nurses, cardiologists, and cardiothoracic surgeons, all who promised to monitor me until surgery was no longer the option. But there was something missing in the entire plan, something that sat in the back of my head every second of the day. What if something went devastatingly wrong? The question was crippling. It was the first time I was faced with my own mortality. As a nurse, I've seen the worst of the worst. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've seen some of the most complex cardiac surgery cases result in nothing short of miraculous endings. But I've also seen straightforward cases go south very quickly. How then could I not hope for the best, but plan for the worst? Was this really the moment I had avoided in which I needed to draft what the end of my story would look like? How could I even consider or discuss the end when life was just beginning for me and my family? As I rocked my 5-month-old to sleep that night, I fell apart, tears dripping from my face, a sense of panic taking over my body. Well, instead of crumbling to the ground as a result of fear, I know that I needed to map out the ending so that no one else needed to do it for me. But where do I even start? Confused and seemingly lost, I turned to my own practice as a nurse and the tools created by the Institute for Human Caring. Launched in 2014, the Institute for Human Caring created the Whole Person Care Initiative, which made it easier for us as caregivers to get to know our patients for more than just the disease that they presented with. From this initiative, the Serious Illness Conversation Guide, otherwise now called as the Goals of Care Conversation, was born. These conversations address the patient's values, priorities, and preferences at the end of life. Thanks to these tools, I was able to begin the conversation with my husband. Pen to paper, my husband by my side. We created a beautiful possible ending should anything go terribly wrong. And we even talked about goals and wishes for the journey ahead. On January 24th, 2017, I put my nursing hat aside. I walked into the hospital for what would be the biggest challenge of my life. I'm not entirely sure that I could put into words the amount of fear that consumed my body. You would have thought that the months and the days prior would have prepared me for the moment that I let go of my husband's hand as they wheeled me in the OR. Truth be told, nothing could have prepared me for that day or the days that followed. But the end of life conversations I had with my husband and my family brought me peace. I felt empowered. My goals, my wishes, my worst case scenarios, family involvement, timelines, trade-offs, and how I wanted to live my life should anything go wrong were all discussed and carefully thought out. As I looked around the OR and slowly fell asleep, I knew no matter the outcome, my wishes were known. The days that followed were much like climbing Mount Everest, armed with a breathing tube, chest tubes, central lines, and incisions. The pain seemed like more than one person could ever handle. I remember clinging to the side of my bed, praying for just a minute of relief. But there was no time for self-pity or tears. I was bound and determined to get home to my family. With every walk I took around the intensive care, I became stronger, both physically and mentally. My surgeons, PAs, and nurses were amazed at my progress and steadfast determination. Until on day 3, I woke up for a routine blood draw at 5:30 a.m. to the reality at some point during the night, I had suffered a stroke. I was blind in my left eye, and all the hope, strength, and motivation I had gained over the last few days was somehow torn from me. I thought I was invincible. How could this happen to me? This wasn't supposed to happen to me. This is what my patients go through. The fear of the unknown, the feeling of being completely out of control, questions of where do I go from here? The only difference was I had discussed these what ifs. Where do I go from here? What's most important in my life? What are my goals? And what do I want from this life? As I revisited these thoughts alone in my hospital room that night, it was these realizations that motivated me to pull it together, put one foot in front of the other, and beat this. You see, I was the lucky one. I may not have my vision back today, but unlike so many of my patients, I decide how I want to live this life. I have a chance to carry out my goals and my wishes. One of them is standing right here in front of you today. See, the thing is that when you have that moment in your life, when you're faced with your own mortality, fear sets in, and you wish you had control. You pray fiercely for a good outcome and for the possibility of a few more chapters. Trust me, I see this day in and day out in the intensive care. I've had some of the most difficult conversations with my patients. I held their hands through some of the most painful moments and shed tears with them when they think all hope is lost. But somehow, when I shift the focus for them and simply ask them how their story ends, hope endures, power is restored, and their inherent dignity is protected and preserved. Here's the difficult fact to digest. Despite all the advances made in medicine over the centuries, we as healthcare providers haven't created a cure for death. We are mortal. Death and dying. There, I said it. The two dreaded subjects that somehow we as humans seem to do an impeccable job at avoiding discussing. We somehow think and hope that if we don't talk about it, it won't happen. Am I right? The problem is that as a result of society placing such a stigma on the topic of death and dying, when things turn for the worse without warning, family members and loved ones are forced to make extremely difficult decisions on behalf of their loved ones without ever having the discussion beforehand. In the intensive care, I'm asked the same question quite frequently. Am I making the right decision? Followed by, I don't know what he or she would have wanted. We never talked about it. And sadly, after their passing, the family member is left with the guilt of uncertainty of whether they honored their loved one's wishes. We fear death, so we avoid the discussion. Thus, the ending of someone's novel is written by someone who is left guessing between options they never considered themselves. Never in my career have I seen the devastating aftermath of this reality in such epic proportions until this last year. COVID-19 was more than just a virus that wreaked havoc on countless individuals' lives, regardless of age, sex, race, or ethnicity. It didn't discriminate, and it definitely didn't give any consideration to what was going on in someone's life. A father preparing to walk his daughter down the aisle in just 2 short months. The mother of 4, preparing to see her daughter be the first college graduate in the family. The soon-to-be first-time dad. The 24-year-old just beginning his life. The list goes on. I've been asked many times what the most difficult part of COVID has been for me as a nurse. What a straightforward question with such a complex answer. I witnessed COVID take the lives of far too many people in such an incredibly inhumane manner. I witnessed far too many family members saying goodbye to their loved ones via Zoom. I've witnessed the defeat and relentless sadness on the other side of the screen as a mom, dad, son, daughter, sister, brother pleaded for their loved ones to just wake up. I've cried with loved ones, and I've sobbed at the bedside of my patients praying for a miracle. I've seen fear in my patients' eyes, knowing in my heart that this was the end. But that wasn't the hardest part. See, the hardest part of COVID was so much deeper. COVID robbed people of their inherent dignity and their ability to choose the ending to their beautiful stories. Instead, family members were left with the painstaking decision of choosing for them. We as nurses did our best to paint a picture of their loved ones and explain the plan of care in a way that they could easily understand without the luxury of having them at bedside. Our doctors and palliative care team worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between hospital and home and provide support the best way possible. But how do you possibly tell the husband on the phone that his wife of 50 years is dying, that it's time to let go, that this is the end? How do you possibly explain to the mother of a 24-year-old via Zoom that we've tried everything, but that everything wasn't enough? These are just two examples of patients who simply, by no fault of their own, assumed that there was plenty of time left to have discussions about the end of life. But if there's anything we've learned from COVID, it's that tomorrow is never promised. Today, right this minute, we have the beautiful gift of choosing. We have the honor of putting our wishes on paper and drafting an ending that ensures our legacy shines on forever. This is my story. In my eyes, a beautiful story of being perfectly imperfect, facing challenges with confidence and determination, embracing the downfalls, but relishing in the moments of success and triumph. I've learned that with every challenge presented, no matter how hard, there exists an opportunity to rethink and edit your own life story. That's the beauty of this. Open heart surgery challenged me in ways I never thought possible, both physically and mentally. It is from this experience that I embraced my own mortality and created an ending which shines light on the legacy I wish to leave behind. COVID-19, as devastating as the experience was and still is, reminded me how precious this life is. It tried to break me down. It tried to rob me of my passion and love for my job. It tried to destroy my soul, and it worked tirelessly to cast a shadow of doubt over my own inherent hope. But it failed. This is my story, and I control how this story ends. It's now been 4 years since my surgery, and my battle with COVID in the intensive care still persists. But my whole life as an individual, mom, and nurse has changed. I walk with purpose and confidence. My life is devoted to my health, my family, my friends, and the patients that I am so honored to care for. I hold the hands of patients each day, somehow hoping they will realize I understand their challenges and the pain and the fear that overcomes them. I used to laugh at the irony of being an ICU nurse caring for cardiac surgery patients and then becoming one myself. But now I realize it was all a part of my purpose as a nurse. It was during these moments as a patient and a nurse on the front lines of COVID where I realized how I wanted to live up to the very last page. Here's the good news. You are the authors of your own life, and yes, you even get to write the ending. Today, you put aside your fear and the hesitation that you have and start asking yourself, what is important to me? What are your goals and your wishes? What is the legacy that you wish to leave behind? Put the pen to paper, sit with your loved ones, and share your wishes. Break the ice, tear down the walls, push the fear aside, and talk about it. And don't worry about perfection. The beauty of this is that you can write as many drafts as you want. After all, what seems important at this moment in time may change in the coming months and years, and that's okay. See, you'll notice something interesting happen. When you sit down to talk about the end-of-life wishes, you'll realize it's not actually talking about dying. The discussions becomes more about how do you want to live? Ladies and gentlemen, these are your dreams, your words, your story, your legacy. So I ask you, how will the last few pages of your story read? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we ask any questions, we're going to show a short video from the Institute of Human Caring so you get a little bit more information about what Lindsey was referring to.
Here at Providence, we're doing everything we can to make people aware that we're caring for whole persons. We want the patients and families we serve to feel that people who are ill are being cared for in a way that is medically excellent, but also in ways that honor their inherent human dignity. We want families to feel that their loved ones were not just clean and comfortable, but honored and celebrated. That we can do consistently, reliably, melding medical excellence with tenderness and love. I have the privilege and pleasure of developing the Institute for Human Caring within Providence. The Institute is an engine for quality improvement system-wide. We've elaborated just 4 organizing principles to really refocus our routine caring on whole persons and their families. The first is that every person we serve at Providence is a whole person. They have bodies and obviously need for diagnosis and treatment of their ailments. They also have the needs for physical comfort, as well as emotional well-being, interpersonal and social well-being, and even spiritual well-being. The second organizing principle is that the fundamental nature of illness and dying, as well as caregiving and grieving, is personal. These are deeply personal times in the life of every individual and family. And so while we bring state-of-the-art medical science and technology to deal with the medical, we must never forget that we're caring for whole persons in the context of their families. The third organizing principle really builds from the first two, and it is that quality of care requires that the treatments we provide are consistent with the values, preferences, and priorities of the persons that we serve. And fourth, the fourth organizing principle is simply that sovereignty over illness and dying, caregiving and grieving, properly belongs to families and communities. So that whenever possible, we should be providing medical services within the context of people's families and communities. And when that's not possible, when people are in a hospital or in an ICU or in a nursing home, and they have to be there because of the medical needs, we should do whatever we can to bring family and community to them, or recreate a sense of community around them.
So again, just thank you for participating and listening to what these inspirational women have had to share, the stories and the pages that they write in their lives. So we're going to take a break. Now, the best thing about Zoom is, imagine we are in the ballroom at the Marriott Hotel, and now 300 women want to get up, and guess what they want to do? So we're going to give you a 10-minute break, but hopefully the queue for the loo at your own place won't be as bad. And we'll put a countdown up for you. But this is also a great time to shop and purchase raffle tickets, look at our vendors. And when we come back, we'll do another drawing, a few more door prizes. So 10 minutes, we'll see you guys again. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. So we're going to do a few more drawings, 3 more door prizes. So watch the wheel of names. There are a lot of people registered, which is why that has so many little spins on it.
You see that? It says Dana Garrity.
Dana Garrity is our first winner. Again, we have obviously your email on file, so we will be in touch with you after to let you know what you've won.
Adrian Norquist.
Adrian Norquist. And one more.
Maria Kazan.
Maria Kazan. So congratulations to our winners. All right, so now hopefully this introduction won't make me cry. I would like to introduce just an inspiring and fabulous woman, Dr. Anita Sircar, she is an infectious disease physician, clinical instructor of infectious diseases at UCLA. She's currently based in the South Bay and works as an infectious disease physician for us and really has helped lead us through this COVID-19 pandemic at both of our medical centers here in Torrance and Little Company San Pedro. She brings a wealth of knowledge to our ministries. She worked with the CDC during the Ebola outbreak. Her sister is a physician with the CDC. And she clearly embodies our mission of serving the poor and vulnerable as she continues to work with Doctors Without Borders. And I recently found out she's with the Flying Samaritans. And that's a volunteer organization which operates free one-day medical clinics in Baja, Mexico, while helping to train young physicians, or should I say younger, because you're still pretty young there. She is a very busy woman, but she has never said no when we've asked her to help us understand what this pandemic is about. And we know you have a lot of questions. So in preparing for this, she said, what should I talk about? And I said, think about all the questions you're getting and try to answer those because I think that's what people want to know. But we will allow a little time for people to have questions, put them in the chat box, and we'll ask them at the end. So Dr. Anita Sircar.
Thank you, Lori, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak here today. I don't have a truly inspirational story like the two speakers before me had, but in some ways, COVID-19 for the last year has been my story. Even though I'm trained as an infectious disease by training, I have been a COVID-19 doctor for the last year with on-the-job training. So what I would like to do today is kind of give you an update of where we are now and in the pandemic and kind of looking forward to what we expect to see down the road. Okay, so where are we now? I always like to start off my presentations by orienting us to where we have come, how far we have come, and how we've gotten to where we are now. So let's do a little review. So if we go all the way back to December 2019, this was the first time the world started to learn about a new cluster of pneumonia cases being reported in Wuhan, China. A few weeks later, on January 20th of last year, the United States had its very first case of COVID-19 in Washington state. By March 11th, the WHO had declared COVID-19 a worldwide pandemic. And on March 19th, 2020 of last year, California became the first state in the country to go under lockdown for the mandatory stay-at-home order. It has been 1 year and 21 days today since this has been declared a pandemic. So we're nearing 400 days of a pandemic. In that time, in the worldwide statistics as of yesterday, we have over 133 million cases reported worldwide and nearly 3 million deaths. When we look at the countries around the world that have the highest number of cases and the highest number of deaths, the United States still leads this pandemic, followed closely behind by Brazil. If we look at the United States statistics as of yesterday, countrywide, we have over 30.7 million cases reported and over 554,000 deaths. If we divided the country by county and looked at county level highest number of cases and deaths, Los Angeles still tops the country as the county with the highest number of deaths and the highest number of cases. So for those of us here in Los Angeles, this is a pandemic that is still very, very close to home, and we're not through it yet. So California, a year ago, California reported 10,000 cases. As of this month, we have over 3 million cases in the state of California. So this is a big problem in our state. Last year, as Lindsey sort of already spoke about, was a devastating year in terms of the numbers of deaths. The CDC reported that last year, COVID-19 was the third leading cause of deaths in the United States after heart disease and cancer. 2020 was also declared the deadliest year in recorded US history. There was a 15% increase in the number of US deaths related to COVID-19. And at this time, almost 1 in every 3 people in the United States know somebody who has died from COVID-19. Early numbers this year show us that it is the #1 cause of death as of February 2021, followed by heart disease and cancer. And last year, 528,000 deaths reported in the first 12 months of the pandemic corresponded to 1 death a minute, every minute for every day of last year. So it was not an easy year. So where are we doing, how are we doing today in Los Angeles? You don't have to even be able to see these graphs or to know what the axes on the curves show, but if you just look at these curves, these are good curves to look at. In Los Angeles County, we've had 1.2 million cases reported since the start of the pandemic and over 23,000 deaths. But the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are all going down. So these are curves. These are nice curves that we like to see. As you can see, we had a really big peak, and now these cases are coming down. But what is concerning us today, and what is leading to some of the rumblings that you may be seeing, is that are the cases coming down fast enough? So despite this, Los Angeles is starting to reopen. As of March 15th, for the first time in many months, we went from a widespread tier, where basically we were still in lockdown, to a red tier, which was just a 1 tier below with just a substantial number of decreasing of cases that would allow us to open more sectors of the city. 4 days ago, Los Angeles County went from red tier to orange tier, putting us at a moderate level, meaning that there was enough number of decreases in cases and hospitalizations to allow more sectors of society to open, such as restaurants and movie theaters and gyms. But the question at this point in the pandemic is, are we opening up too soon? And this is some of the news that you may have seen or heard about, that people are talking about the concern about the increasing number of cases. So more than half the country right now has started to see an increase in COVID-19 cases. Even though the numbers are better than they were at the beginning of the year or at the end of last year, they're still rising at somewhat of an uncomfortable rate. And this is a concern because the question being asked at this time in the pandemic is a 4th wave coming? So if you look at this graph that I put up here, this is the start of the pandemic till now. There have been 3 already major surges that we have seen during this pandemic. The first surge was when this pandemic started in March and April, where we started to see an increased number of cases. And we definitely felt that here in the hospital. We had a blip of cases where our hospital was saturated with the number of COVID-19 cases we were seeing. Then at the early part of the summer of last year, we started to see another surge in cases. This was due partly to some of just the lockdown fatigue and people starting to want to move more, that we started to see a second surge in cases. The end of last year, November till January, we saw a massive surge in cases. A lot of this was due to the holiday season, but most of it could have been because a new circulating virus variant had been found in the population. So the modeling looking at this graph right now is trying to predict, is a fourth wave coming? Where we are in this, sorry. Okay, so where we are right now in the pandemic is basically a race between staving off a fourth wave and getting as many people vaccinated as possible. And that is my main message today about why vaccination is so important. So reasons why a fourth wave may happen, and none of us want to see a fourth wave, we're all exhausted, we can't go through a fourth wave, is that states are starting to ease restrictions on social distancing, on wearing masks. As you can see, California itself is starting to reopen. People are starting to travel more. We have spring break happening right now, and spring break is mostly driven by our largely unvaccinated population. These are our young kids and our teenagers that are on spring break and are gathering in larger groups. So this makes us a little bit nervous. There's still a large amount of vaccine hesitancy where people are still not ready to get vaccinated. We know that children aren't eligible for the vaccine right now, and there's overwhelming concern about there being a spread of more transmissible variants. So let's talk about variants for a minute. So what is a variant? A variant is a mutated strain of the original virus. So the original virus that started this pandemic in March of last year was the China variant, which we call D614G. Since that time, there have been 3 predominantly circulating variants that have been found around the world: the UK, the South African, and the Brazilian variant. And they all have numbers that are attached to them. California, because we like to do things our own way, we also have our own homegrown variant, which is not one of the predominantly circulating variants of the world, but it is a variant of concern that we're watching closely here in our state. So the problem with these variants, and all 4 of them have now been found in California, is that these variants are more efficiently transmissible, meaning they're more contagious. It's easier to be infected by one of these mutant variants than it was the original strain of the China virus that started this pandemic. The other concern is that the vaccines that are being given out right now may have some reduced efficacy against these variants, especially the South African and the Brazilian strains. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get vaccinated. As of yesterday, the CDC reported that the most common circulating virus strain variant in the US right now is the UK variant. And this one is more contagious than the original. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get vaccinated. And this is why I want to really encourage everybody to get vaccinated as soon as it's their turn. So let's talk about vaccines for a minute. So currently in the US, there are 3 FDA approved vaccines. There's the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and Johnson & Johnson. The Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine are mRNA vaccines. They require 2 doses. Moderna is 4 weeks apart. Pfizer is 3 weeks apart. And they are indicated for people above 16 years old for Pfizer and 18 years and above for Moderna. Johnson & Johnson, which was just recently approved, is a different kind of vaccine. It is called a viral vector vaccine and is a single dose vaccine, and is indicated for anybody above 18 years old. All 3 of these vaccines have been shown in clinical trials to reduce hospitalizations and deaths. So it doesn't matter which vaccine you get, take the first one offered to you. So don't shop around. Just take the first one that is offered to you when it's your turn to get the vaccine. All vaccines, all 3 of them have shown in clinical trials to completely prevent hospitalizations and deaths. And we are actually kind of seeing that in the hospital now. We are seeing less and less people come in because more and more people are getting vaccinated, which is very encouraging. Any vaccine at this stage in the pandemic is better than no vaccine at all. So when you sign up and you get an appointment for a vaccine, don't even ask what the vaccine is, just show up and get a vaccine. Doesn't matter which one. Any of these vaccines will reduce your chances of life-threatening illness should you become infected. And as Lindsey told you the year that we had last year in the ICU or in the hospital of the COVID cases and the devastating amount of deaths is something none of us want to see again. So having a vaccine available to us now is a game changer, and these vaccines are incredible for what they can do. Getting vaccinated also helps protect all those people around you who may not be able to get a vaccine or aren't eligible for a vaccine yet. So who can get vaccinated in LA? As of now, if you are 50 years and above, you can go and make an appointment and get vaccinated. Next Thursday, April 15th, anybody in LA County who is 16 years or older who wants to get a vaccine can get a vaccine for free. They don't have to have any medical letters. They don't have a permission from a doctor. They can just sign up online and get vaccinated starting next Thursday. So let's talk about how we're doing vaccine-wise. So California, since we've been vaccinating, has had 26% of the over 16 population in California is fully vaccinated, and that's great. That's really wonderful that 26% of the over 16 population is fully vaccinated. Most of the older 65 and above have been vaccinated by now. Our nursing homes have been vaccinated, and we are starting to see a decrease in those cases coming through the hospital. But when we talk about what level we need to achieve to get herd immunity, we're talking about 75 to 85% of the population. So as you can see, we have a very long way to go. And so what does herd immunity mean? Herd immunity means that enough of the population is immune, either through vaccination or through natural immunity from having COVID, that the chance of the virus disseminating widely becomes less and less until we're at a point where we can declare this pandemic over. A virus can only mutate if it can replicate, and a virus can only replicate if it finds a susceptible host to enter. So if most of the population is vaccinated or has immunity, a virus will not find a way to enter a body to replicate, and that way it cannot mutate. That's why it is so important for as many people to get vaccinated as quickly as possible before we start to see more of these variant strains. So in the US, 58 million Americans have been fully vaccinated. That's great. That's about 17% of the total population. And remember, we're still trying to get to that 80% marker higher for herd immunity. So we're not there yet. But we have 3 million people or more getting vaccinated a day, which is very encouraging. But if we look at the world, only 1.8% of the world population has been vaccinated. So we still have a long way to go. Remember, a pandemic means it's global. So until it's over for all of us, it's not over for any of us, because what we've been seeing through this whole pandemic is whatever happens on the East Coast, the North, and the UK eventually makes its way to the West. So even if we're doing good by a state and California level, that may not last for long. So I would never ask you to do something that I myself have not done. So this is me getting my Pfizer vaccine 1 and 2 at the end of last year. It was easy. I had a sore arm for a day. I was a little bit tired, but I showed up to work the next day. I did 72 hours straight of call, and I didn't even know that I had gotten vaccinated. This is my mom. My mom is 76 years old. She is on medicines that lower her immune system for her rheumatoid arthritis. The first day she was eligible to get a vaccine, I drove her. This is her getting her first and second doses. I think she's watching today, so hi, Mom, I love you. But she bravely went and got it. She had a sore arm for a day, and she was a little bit fatigued, but she muscled through it, and she had no problems. And I didn't get to see my family much this year, let alone have a family portrait, but this is my best family portrait ever, possibly, because these are the vaccination cards of all of my family. So my whole family is now fully vaccinated, and everybody did really well. So get vaccinated. It is worth it. It's worth it for you. It's worth it for your family. It is worth it for the pandemic. So where can you go to get vaccinated? The easiest place to start is the LA County Public Health website. If you don't have access to a computer or you're not really good at it, you can call the 800 number and they can help you find a place that's near you that you can go and get vaccinated. More and more places like Walgreens and Costco and CVS are starting to open up to give vaccines, so it should be more widely available for you. So what are the perks of getting vaccinated? What can you do? Once you're fully vaccinated, and remember, fully vaccinated means that you have had 2 weeks after your last dose of any vaccine. So after your second dose of Pfizer, your second dose of Moderna, or after the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you are fully vaccinated. So the perks of being fully vaccinated: you could gather indoors with other fully vaccinated people without having to wear a mask or stay 6 feet apart. So that's very encouraging. You can also gather indoors with other unvaccinated people from any age range in one other household. So if you have been waiting a year to hug your grandkids, go get vaccinated, and then 2 weeks later, go over and hug your grandkids, because you can do that now. That is one of the perks of being vaccinated. You do not need to get tested before or after travel if you're in the US. You don't even have to self-quarantine if you're fully vaccinated. If you are exposed to somebody who is positive, you don't have to get tested, and you don't have to quarantine yourself unless you start to show symptoms. But remember, once you are vaccinated, what we still don't know yet is if you're able to pass on infection to somebody else. If you were to become infected and you're fully vaccinated, you would never develop disease, but can you pass virus to somebody else is a question we still don't have an answer for. So what are the things that you should still keep doing? So when you are in public, even if you're fully vaccinated and you're gathering with other unvaccinated people from more than one household, or you're visiting an unvaccinated person who has an increased risk of illness, you should still wear a mask. You should still stay 6 feet apart. You should still avoid crowds. You still need to wear masks on planes and public transportation, and you still need to watch for symptoms of COVID-19. Okay, so we are 1 year through this pandemic, 13 months through this pandemic. If 2020 was a learning curve, I think we earned our bachelor's. In 2021, we are earning our master's degree, because we are still learning this infection. We are still learning this virus. And there are many, many things that we still don't know. So one of the things that we still don't understand is why some people get really sick and some people don't get sick at all. And we've seen this in the hospital. We'll have 2 patients that are exactly the same age, have this exact same medical background. One will be in the ICU for a week, one will go home in 3 days, and we don't understand why. We don't understand what are the long-term health consequences of an infection. We know that there are symptoms that can linger for long after patients have been discharged. We still don't know what that will look like a year or 2 or 5 years from now. We don't know how long natural immunity lasts once you've been infected, and we still don't even know how long vaccine immunity lasts. Those are still questions that are attempting to be answered. As I mentioned, we don't know if vaccinated people can still spread disease. We don't know if the vaccines that we currently have available are reliable against variant strains. And we don't know how these variant strains are going to look different from the dominant circulating virus from early in this pandemic. Will they look different? Are they more deleterious in terms of what they can do in their disease spectrum? We don't know how these variants affect our existing therapies, the drugs that we are using now. Can we still use them on these variants? That's still a question that we don't have an answer to. And the biggest question is, we still don't know if this pandemic will end in 2021. As I mentioned, we're still trying to stave off a 4th wave, but this is a question that we don't know if it will be answered. The WHO declared this a pandemic 1 year and 3 weeks ago. They still have yet to say when they think this will end. But I don't want to end this presentation on a gloomy, doomy note. So I want to tell you that there are hopeful signs. And like this woman's sign says, it may be stormy now, but it never rains forever. The fact that cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are decreasing is a very hopeful sign. More people are getting vaccinated every day, which is very encouraging. Vaccines are being shown to work in children. So soon, I hope that there will be a recommendation that children can get vaccinated, because we'll never reach that herd immunity until they are. We're seeing that people who have long hauler symptoms are starting to show some benefit by getting vaccinated. Testing has become more easier and widely available. We're also seeing that reinfection of COVID-19 is rare, which is a very good sign. Whether or not the variants will mix that up is yet to be seen. More therapeutics and treatment options are being developed. We as doctors are definitely better at treating this disease than we were a year ago. We know much more about this virus than we did a year ago. And the biggest note I want you to end on is that all pandemics end. I promise you it will end. I don't know when, but if all pandemics did not end, I would be standing here talking about Spanish flu, and I'm not. So all pandemics end. And the last thing I want to say, because this is a women's wellness conference, is that I believe that the brunt and the burden of this pandemic has been carried on the backs of some of the strongest and most talented women that I have ever had the privilege to work with. From my fellow doctors, to the nurses, to EVS, to phlebotomists, to the respiratory therapists, to the young ladies who check our temperature when we walk to the hospital every day. I want to thank these fearless, strong, dedicated women that I have worked with tirelessly for a year for showing up every day for 13 months and winning this pandemic one day at a time. I thank you for your efforts. You make me want to be a better doctor every day. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for not having me come up here and needing to cry after your presentation and giving us some hope. So there were a few questions that came up about the vaccine. One is, and you sort of touched on this because you said we don't really understand, but will the COVID vaccine have to be an annual event, or do we think just one time is good?
So that's a very good question. I do think that this virus, and I think a lot of the thinking in the scientists studying this virus, is that this virus has made its way into our lives and into our community strong enough that we are going to have to deal with it year after year. Maybe not at pandemic levels, but it will become, I think, sort of a seasonal virus that we see like we see influenza.
The next question I think is kind of pertinent and very interesting is, how do we deal with people who don't think they should get the vaccine? What can we say to them?
Yeah, so we've seen in behavioral studies that shaming people into getting a vaccine never works. Trying to tell people that they're wrong for not wanting to is also not going to work. The best that we can do is to educate people, to tell them that vaccinating themselves is almost like a selfless act too, because it's not just for yourself personally, it's for those that you love around you. So even if you don't want to get vaccinated for yourself, in some way, getting vaccinated for those around you is the selfless thing to do. There was a very sad report that came out yesterday that said 40,000 children in the US last year lost a parent to COVID-19, which is a huge, huge loss. So even if you don't want to get vaccinated for yourself, get vaccinated for your children who can't get vaccinated right now, so they don't have to be part of a statistic like that next year.
Wow, thank you. The next question, and this is something that I actually hear a lot in the vaccine clinic. I've had COVID.
Yeah.
Do I need a vaccine? Are my antibodies better? Are they going to last?
Right.
What are your recommendations there?
So natural immunity from COVID-19 infection is variable, meaning if you had a light, mild touch of COVID, I don't know how robust of an antibody response you made after that illness versus somebody who was hospitalized or put in the ICU. So because the variability of how much immune response is left over after somebody's infected is unknown, we still recommend that if you have had COVID to still get vaccinated, because vaccines give us a more durable understanding of how long your immunity can be there. It is recommended that if you have had COVID to wait 90 days before you go for your vaccine, because you don't ever want to go into any vaccine unless you're fully healthy, so your body can mount a good response to that vaccine.
Great. Okay, anything else? Oh, okay, another question is coming in. Can contacting COVID 1 month after being vaccinated? If so, why?
Catching COVID 1 month after being vaccinated. Okay, so we're actually starting to see a little bit of this, that patients will come in and say, I got my first dose or my second dose of vaccine. Why is my test positive? And the most likely answer to that is that they were already infected before they had the vaccine. The vaccine will not cause you to become infected. It will not turn a negative test positive. But what we're also seeing is that those patients are not being hospitalized for COVID-related infections. They're being hospitalized for other things. They're not requiring oxygen. They don't have pneumonias. So it's an incidental, almost accidental finding that they're COVID positive even after they've been vaccinated because they probably started having it right before they got the vaccine and they didn't even know it.
Well, again, many thanks to you. I've had the pleasure of working beside you for the last 13 months, and it has just been an extraordinary journey, and getting to know you and appreciate the wisdom that you've imparted to all of us throughout the year. So, and I know when I see her, to follow her if she has a mask on, that's what I do. So thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you,
Sircar.
Lauren.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm gonna
Now we're going to take another break, another short break. So grab a drink, something to hydrate yourself, get lunch if you have time. And when we return, we'll be going to our keynote speaker, Marilu Henner, and we'll also be pulling some more raffle tickets after her presentation. So now's a great time to go online and buy a few more tickets if you'd like, or do some virtual shopping. That's always fun. And we'll be back soon.
So I just want to say one more quick thing, but as we start is, what's really unusual is typically when we do these events and we're in the ballroom, we're never on time. So we built in this extra time. So when people wanted to log on and see Marilu, we'd be there. Of course, we're running perfectly on time today. So that's why you've got this good 20-minute break. But again, we really encourage you to go shopping and purchase raffle tickets, because we will close the raffle as soon as Marilu gets up here.
Okay.
All right.
Enjoy your break. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a nice little break. I know a lot of you are out there celebrating with friends and you've gathered in each other's homes. And my sisters are together with their friends and some of our and in their lovely pink wraps. So this is your final reminder. If you want to buy one of those pink wraps or you'd like to get purchase raffle tickets, we'll be closing the raffle sales in just a few minutes. So make sure you have your tickets if you're interested in that. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce this year's keynote speaker. While you might recognize her from her legendary roles in Taxi and Evening Shade, Marilu Henner is also a New York Times bestselling author of 10 books on health, memory, parenting, and lifestyle improvement. Her books include recent bestsellers, Changing Normal, How I Helped My Husband Beat Cancer, as well as Total Memory Makeover, which has changed the lives of millions of people in her quest to make the world a healthier place. This 5-time Golden Globe nominee was also recently seen on Broadway starring in Getting the Band Back Together, as well as the Hallmark series Aurora Teagarden Mystery Films. As I said before, we love her in all her Hallmark movies. Some of you may also know that Marilu has what is called highly superior autobiographical memory, HSAM. Individuals with HSAM have a superior ability to recall specific details and of autobiographical events and tend to spend a large amount of time thinking about their past and having detailed understanding of the calendar and its patterns. This was highlighted in a television series she produced, Unforgettable. Marilu has spoken before Congress 8 times on various subjects ranging from dietary supplements to women's cardiovascular disease, to deadbeat parents, to the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act, and most recently, taking the fight to the Hill for more money for Alzheimer's research, a very important subject she brought to Capitol Hill. Could there be a more perfect speaker to welcome us back to Power of Pink this year for our Women's Wellness Conference? So here to tell us all about her exciting career and her passion for women's health is Marilu Henner.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. I do a lot of these. I go all over the country. I talk to women's groups. I have never been more blown away by a panel of women, the fellow speakers. I'm like so humbled by it. I cannot believe, I am so honored that you asked me to be part of this. And I've got to say, this kind of situation, remember Taxi was kind of the perfect marriage between Broadway and film. This is kind of the perfect marriage between Zooming and live. You know, there's something so great about this because we're able to be intimate together. And I feel like I feel you out there. I'm so excited that you are here. You are with me in this room and all of you that are actually in this room. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is, because so many of the speakers brought up things that are kind of like a running theme in my life, I'm going to tell you to separate my life, which is very long. I just turned 69 on Tuesday. I'm so excited. And I feel better than I did in my 20s, and for a lot of different reasons. So I'm going to sort of take 3 different sections of my life to talk about. One of them is my early life. One of them is my experience with my husband and the book that we wrote together, and my third and final husband. And also, I'm going to talk about what my experience has been like during COVID, because I have been away a lot of the times working. So I'll tell you what that was like to work and what happened in my family and everything else. Okay, so first of all, let me start from the beginning. I'm a girl from Chicago. I grew up right next door to St. John Berkman's Catholic School. I went to grade school and high school with the nuns. Great education. We were so close to the church, so next door to the church, that my brothers would wake up for the first bell, which was at 8:30, and you had to line up by 8:40. So they like threw themselves together to get there. Okay, my family was not normal in the best possible way. It was like very exciting. People always say to me, what was, how do you feel being in show business? And I always say, well, compared to the way I grew up, I mean, I grew up more like in show business than even what I'm experiencing being an actor. All right, so there were 6 of us, 6 kids, my 2 parents. My father was in the automobile business, everybody wished that they had my parents as their parents, because my mother was kind of the neighborhood therapist. My father was the go-to guy for advice. He was the one that would like get kids out of, you know, if somebody needed bail money or whatever. I grew up in like a real neighborhood in Chicago, Logan Square. It's kind of hipster groovy now, but it was very, you know, kind of like neighborhood with a lot of Polish people. I'm Polish and Greek, Polish, German, and Irish, big Catholic families next door to the church. Well, my mother was a real entrepreneur. She's always been my role model, as my sister Joanne is as well. And my father for my mother created this little dancing school in our backyard. We had a fake 2-car garage. It was actually 2.5-car garage. Fake, we never used it as a garage. And we had 200 students between the ages of 2 and 80, including the nuns who came over for stretch classes from the Catholic school next door. As soon as you were 14, you got to teach a class. So I fell in love with movement at a very young age. All 6 of us taught dancing. And, you know, you'd get this baby class, you'd get teenage class or whatever. We had not only tap, ballet, and jazz for young kids and adults, but also my mother taught social dancing. So I always make the joke that somewhere on our property, I think everybody had their first kiss, because there was a lot of interaction. You know, the 6th and 7th graders had a 6:30 class, and then the 8th and high school kids had a, you know, or I guess it was 6, 7, and 8 had the 6:30 class on Friday, and 7:30 had the high school kids. Okay, so we were next door to this Catholic church. The nuns came over for stretch classes, but that wasn't enough for my mother. She also ran a beauty shop out of our kitchen with about 25 women from the neighborhood who would come over to get their hair done. And the entire kitchen was set up like a salon. We didn't have a refrigerator in the kitchen. That was in the basement. And in its place was a blue hair drying chair. Now, we always say that, you know, our house smelled like perm solution. And as a cook, my mother was a very good dance teacher. But I kind of liked her cooking because it was very simple in a lot of ways. But that wasn't enough for my mother to just teach the nuns dancing. She was also responsible for cutting their hair. But she'd go to the convent for that. My mother also took them to Vassarette. She'd take them bra shopping, and she'd come home with these bras for us that were like 25 cents. And, you know, it was like a demi cup and lace. And we'd say, Mom, you know, wait, I haven't even developed yet. Yeah, you'll grow into it. You'll grow into it. It's 25 cents. It's great. You know, who knows what the nuns were wearing under those habits, but I know that they had good haircuts, and I know that they had, you know, good stretching because of my mother. And I always think about when I go up the stairs, anytime I go up the stairs, I'm always pushing away, because that's what the nuns at St. John Berkman's, where I went to school, they'd always say, push away, push away. And now I want to say, thank you, Sister Mary J-Lo, because it was like, who knows what was going on under those habits. Okay, but that's not enough for my family. My mother's younger brother, my uncle, also lived with us. He had kind of one of those 2-flat Chicago homes. He lived upstairs with 10 cats, 2 dogs, 2 birds, a skunk, 150 fish, and his boyfriend, Charles. And my uncle taught art at the Catholic grammar school next door. He had art classes going on upstairs while the dancing school was going on, while the beauty shop was going on. And he also ran, he was the neighborhood astrologist, and he ran a cat hospital on the roof. So this is how I grew up. Everybody came and slept over. Everybody was like, I mean, my family was so embracing, so open, so wonderful. Everybody's story was accepted and acceptable. And it was just an incredible feeling to grow up with such unbelievable parents. Now, my family was very famous for its parties. I was this little girl who had a very unusual memory. They knew at 6 years old that I had a very unusual memory. People would say to my parents, what's with that kid and her memory? My nickname was Miss Memory, Little Miss Memory, Miss Univac, because that was the old computer, memory kid, things like that. And they would say, you know, I became the family historian. And my father used to say there were always 3 parts to every event: anticipation, participation, and recollection. And the greatest of these is recollection. And so we would have these parties where we'd plan for them, we'd experience them, and then we'd have a recollection day or a recollection party for the party, and where we'd all sit around and talk. my family was very famous for these parties and because of the dancing school, and everybody would dance and everybody would come over and it was like huge. And one Christmas, the Christmas when I was in high school, and I was a senior in high school. So I was a senior, my older sister was 27, my second sister was 23, I was 17, my brother was 16, my sister 15, my little brother was 12. So we were all at this party, and all of a sudden I noticed that my sister ran out to the dance studio to pull my mother into the studio. Into the house. And what had happened was my brother, one of my brothers, had gotten into some liquor that my father had been given as a Christmas present from one of the dance studio students. And he was mouthing off to one of the guests. My father called him inside, and the two of them went in the house. My sister got nervous. She ran out to get my mother. I went in with her. And when we came in, my father was holding my brother down, pinning him, because what had happened was my brother was like, doing this, and the two of them started to this, and my father held him down. My mother and I walked in. My mother grabbed my father, pulled him off my brother, and he slumped into a chair and he had a heart attack. Such a massive heart attack that my mother and I rode in the ambulance to the hospital, and I knew that my father was dead. We got to the emergency room. They took him inside. They worked on him for a few minutes, and they came out and said, "We're so sorry. We couldn't do anything for him." In that moment, our entire lives were changed. Everything changed. My mother had to go and take a regular job because she still had young kids at home. I had been given scholarships to go to the University of Chicago. I probably could have gone anywhere because I was just one of those kids. But I wanted to stay in Chicago because we were re-identifying ourselves as a family. And I watched my mother go from looking like, just being in great shape, health, 6 kids. She looked like a Barbie doll, all this. It was really smart and just was very fit and loved movement. I watched rheumatoid arthritis take over her life, just completely take over her entire body. And within a few years, she was completely ravaged by RA. Now, the only time, our lives really changed after my father died. And when my mother took ill a few years later, she was literally teaching dancing in December, went to bed with the flu in January. It was a brutal Chicago winter. She went into the hospital, and she had her leg amputated in April, and she died in May. This was my beautiful mother, who just a few years ago had been widowed, and the stress of my father's death, because it wasn't figured out or metabolized or whatever the right way, because I think there's such a huge mind-body connection. She passed away at 58 years old. My father was 52. I was 17. My mother was 58. I was 25. And it was incredible because I watched her body try to make sense of whatever the doctors were doing to her. They hooked her up to 13 different machines. Her leg had been amputated, as I said, and underneath her bed, there were these 2 enormous kind of like sparklets, arrowhead jugs, one of, 2 different liquids. One looked like Hawaiian Punch. The other one was kind of a clear liquid. No matter what they did, I saw her body start to rally to make sense of it. So I made a pact with God. I'm such a Catholic schoolgirl, you have no idea. I made a pact with God, and I said, if my mother lives, if she gets out of here alive, I'm going to learn everything I can about the human body and save her life. And if she passes away, I'm going to learn everything I can about the human body and save my life and my brothers and sisters' lives. And when she died, I just said, my parents' deaths are not going to be in vain. When my father died, I ballooned up to 50 pounds heavier than I am right now, more than that actually. And I ate my feelings, and I was not healthy. I was doing a lot of unhealthy things, from smoking to just bad foods, and just would swing my weight like a ridiculous amount in a week. So I was not being in touch with what was good for me. When my mother passed away, I said, I'm not going to look at my life anymore from a vain point of view. I'm going to do it from a healthy point of view. And I ended up changing everything about my life. I went to doctors and nutritionists. I went to medical libraries. I went to the Bodhi Tree, if you know that place in LA, because I'd moved out to LA by then. I took human anatomy classes at UCLA, and I started experimenting with myself. And I put a program together that worked for me. and started counseling other people and trying to teach them about what worked for me and, you know, all the different things that I did that could maybe help them as well. I wrote a book about it. It became a huge bestseller. I mean, I was so lucky, and I was doing it. I was just telling the story. I wrote it while I was doing the Broadway show Chicago, and literally putting on eyelashes at night, you know, with a little tape recorder going, the evils of dairy products, you know, as I'm doing this, and giving lectures to the ensemble and stuff. I wrote the book while I was doing the show. I finished the show on a certain day, March 24th, and then went into, the book came out May 6th. It went on the New York Times bestseller list and was there for an entire year and sold over a million copies. So that's what got me into health and writing and telling my story and the changes that I made and going around the country and trying to help other people. Because to me, maybe it's the middle child in me, if I can help somebody save their parent, if I knew about health, if I knew then what I know now, I probably could have saved my parents' lives, because, you know, heredity is not your destiny, as we all know. And there's so much about stress and the connection between the stress that you go through and how you absorb it into your body. And, you know, the food, I always call it, learn to love the food that loves you. And the food I was eating through most of my life was not the food that loves me. I have totally changed my diet, and it's made such a difference. So there was this huge component in my life, and I just started writing all the books afterwards. And then it was discovered, not discovered, people who knew me always knew I had this unusual memory. So I was asked to write a book about memory as well. Now, in the meantime, I went to the University of Chicago, as I said, and I left to become a professional actress, because I was literally a college student in the morning, a professional actress in the afternoon. Because when I was 15 years old, I was in a show in Chicago in community theater. And one of the guys from the show that I really bonded with, he called me 2 years later. He said, I've written a show. It may never get off the ground. We're going to perform it in a converted trolley barn. I wrote it about the kids I went to high school with. You always reminded me of one of those girls, even though you're a lot younger. And it's called Grease. So long before Grease the movie, Grease the 3 Broadway incarnations, before Grease on Ice, or the television one, I did the original company of Grease in Chicago. And that started me off on a career. And I ended up doing the national company with some wonderful people like Jeff Conaway and Johnny Travolta and Jerry Zaks, who directed all these great Broadway shows, and Michael Lembeck. And, you know, so we were this little company of young actors just starting out. And it just started to put me on that treadmill of career and life and everything that I've always wanted. It's funny, because after my father passed away, I got into the University of Chicago because that's what he would have wanted. And after my mother passed away, I got Taxi like 2 weeks later. So, and that's what she would have always wanted. So I feel like I'm always like living my parents' dreams by writing books for my father and being an actress for my mother. Okay, so here I was at the University of Chicago, 18 years old, and I had a roommate named Linda, and she had this boyfriend who was so cute. She met him first, and when I met him, it was like, damn, shoot. Okay, well, I didn't dare twinkle in his direction. His name was Michael. Didn't dare twinkle in his direction, but always really liked him. He and Linda came to see me in the original Grease, and it was like really, you know, special and everything else. They broke up second year, so he was the enemy on campus, and we just kind of waved to each other. And he would, you know, we didn't have anything to do with each other. Now I'm getting married to my first soon-to-be ex-husband in a courthouse in New Orleans, and he's at in this tiny room. I mean, it's barely like 2 podiums wide, et cetera. And I'm thinking, this is the biggest mistake of my life. What the hell am I doing getting married to this guy? We barely knew each other. We were cast in a movie together. And I'm sitting there going, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I look out the doorway for a split second. And all of a sudden I see Michael from the University of Chicago, like walking down the hall. And I say to Freddie, I'll be right back. So I go out in the hall and I say, what are you doing here? He said, oh, I'm working here. I'm a merchant seaman. My wife with my kids. I've been living in Brazil. My wife's Brazilian. My children half Brazilian. It's like, oh, I'm getting married. It's like, oh, okay, goodbye, goodbye. And he walks away from me and I said, how come I'm not marrying a guy like that? Didn't bode well for my first marriage. So that was 2 years in. We were in and out of a marriage in less than 2 years. And then I meet my second husband, who's fabulous, and he was wonderful. And we were together 16 years and had 2 fabulous sons together. And 6 months after my divorce was final, out of nowhere, Michael calls me. And I'm like, my heart is pounding. I had seen a psychic, a friend of mine set me up with a psychic who predicted an M was coming into my life. And I said, do I know this guy? And he says, if you do, you've never known him this way. I'm like, okay. He's going to be a great father to your kids and stepfather and blah, blah, blah. Okay. Anyway, so Michael and I go together. We go out, we make this date. And I'm thinking, we don't even know it's a date. But I'm thinking, oh, is it a reunion dinner? Is it a date? A reunion dinner, a date? The first 4.5 hours was asking each other, like, so what do you want in your life now? Why did your marriages break up? And the next 4.5 was making out on my kitchen couch. So I knew it was a date. Within a week, we're saying, I love you. We're going to spend the rest of our lives together. And within 2 months, he's diagnosed with stage 2-3 bladder cancer. And then he's diagnosed with lung cancer. First few months of our relationship. So I say to him, okay, I want to take you to the doctors that I know who are going to put a whole protocol together for you and look at you holistically, like everybody was talking about how, what they do here, and they look at you. This is 2003. I said, but before we go, let's go to a typical doctor who might be the guy recommended for bladder cancer. So we do. I won't say his name. He's kind of retired now, but some of you might be able to figure out who I'm talking about. And we walk into his office and he says, this is your lucky day. We said, really? Why? And he says, I have a cancellation on Wednesday. Doesn't even look at his chart. Doesn't examine him at all. He goes, yeah, I have a cancellation on Wednesday. We're going to go in. We're going to take out the bladder. We're going to take out the prostate. We're going to make a neobladder by pulling down a piece of your intestines. He looks at the horrified looks on our faces and he goes, oh, and don't worry if you two want to have sex. We're going to run a small hose up his penis. You just pump it up 6 times. I said, oh, well, can we have the 7-pump model? Because we're a sexy couple. I said, what about nutrition, health, detox, immunotherapy? No, go have all the steak and highballs you want. Then we're going to do chemo, radiation, blah, blah, blah. We thought, okay, all right. So we go to the parking lot. We said, we'll let you know about Wednesday. Michael says, I don't think I want to lose my organs. And I said, well, I don't think you have to. Anyway, to make a very long story short, he went through an entire protocol doing immunotherapy, BCG. He went through so many different things, supplementation and hydration and Iscador and high colonics and infrared saunas and lymphatic massages. And most of all, he worked on his mind. And because we loved each other so much and we were at the beginning of our relationship, there was so much of that. I became a caregiver. And everybody who's ever been a caregiver, how depleting it can be for you and how important it is for you as a caregiver to fortify yourself and find different things. We were at the early stage of our relationship and I'd go with him to his doctor's appointments and I was in these cute little summer dresses because it was summer. And then I thought, no, forget that. I'm wearing comfortable shoes. I'm layering up. I'm going to use it to, multitask my health. I'm going to come with a list of questions. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that he knows I am there for him. Even if it means leaving him alone when he's getting depressed or really sad about what he's been through. I mean, my husband and I wrote a book a few years ago. Well, first of all, let me just tell you this. He ended up going into remission on both cancers. He did have, for his lung cancer, they went in. We had so many things that happened to us during this time. They went in to sort of see, what the spot, because they discovered a spot on his lung. His doctor did a scan and they discovered a spot on his lung 2 months after, because of the bladder cancer. They discovered a spot on his lung because he got a body scan. And it really is one of the things that saved him because the lung cancer might have turned out to be so much worse. But he went into remission on one, he went into remission on the other. He did have the lower lobe, he had to have it taken out on the side and they found it was stage 1A. And when he was coming to in the hospital, he proposed to me, which is so sweet. I think I remember it. I don't know if he does, but we are married now for several years. But he's now been in remission. It'll be 18 years, November 24th. on two cancers. And he put his protocol. Everybody is different. You have to find what works for you. That's what everybody is always talking about, like what works for you. I know what has worked for me nutritionally. I know what has worked for me psychologically, or what is working. And I'm constantly a student trying to figure out new things. And Michael, I mean, I always say he kept his bladder, he kept his prostate, he kept his intestines where they were supposed to be, and no pump necessary. So we are happily married now, except the only time we've had trouble is when we went to write a book together about his cancer. Okay. I said to him, it's a good thing you don't have it now, because I don't know if I'd be helping to save you, because I wanted to kill him while he was working on the book. The two of us were like, I was writing like a how-to book, trying to take people on our journey, walking them through the experience that we had. And he was writing Old Man and the Sea, so we had two different styles. We were constantly like butting heads, but happy to say we're happier. We've been married almost 15 years, and we're happier now than I think we've ever been. And we've been through a lot together, especially in the early parts of our relationship. And let's face it, the pandemic has been crazy for people, not just the people that you live with. I don't have to tell you guys. I mean, I'm like listening to your stories today and the statistics and everything that you guys have been through and what this hospital does. And it's so miraculous and it's so special to me. I feel like I'm like the little person wanting to follow you around and watch you do your, I should have been a doctor. I really should have. I mean, I'm obsessed with Dr. Pimple Popper, okay? I mean, I should have been a doctor, because there's nothing weird that anybody can tell me. I mean, I can be eating and you can talk about something gross. I love it. I love the human body, because the human body wants to heal. And I learned that from watching my mother. If you start doing the right things for it, it's going to pay you off in so many ways. The human body is always going to look to heal. And it's so exciting when that happens. It's so exciting when somebody starts to make a connection and they can start really, really helping themselves. Because you see it. I'm sure you see it every day. And so much of it has to do with this. Which brings me to what's been going on this past year for everybody. Okay, I started the pandemic. It's really funny. I was just telling this story too. I was in New York. I was doing my show. I have a one-woman show I go around the country doing. I'm going to be doing it this summer in Bucks County. And so what happened is I was in New York doing it. It was on March 4th. And I picked that date, not only because it's Michael's birthday, and I figured that was a good way to remember, but I also felt like I'm always looking, because I have this unusual memory where I remember virtually every day of my life. I want something sticky for people. And so I thought, okay, March 4th, as Michael's always saying, March 4th, it's the only imperative command in the entire calendar. March 4th, right? It's a sentence. So I figured, that'll be, a good reminder for people, because I could have picked a different date. So here we were, March 4th, lockdown, March 11th. March 11th, I was in Vancouver starting a movie. They pulled the plug, they sent us home. And the first 3.5 months, from March 13th till July 1st, I was at home with 7 people, cooking and cleaning and doing laundry and scrubbing grout and doing Zoom. And the hardest thing by far to me of the entire pandemic has been teaching kids online, having them do Zoom school, because boy, remote learning. My brother's 2 little kids live with us part of the time. They were 5 and 7 at the start of the pandemic, and now they're 6 and 8, and the schools have figured it out. Now they're back at school. But anybody who has children or is responsible for little children, there is nothing harder. And now these little kids are sitting in a classroom and they get into their masks. They love their masks. They socially distant. They do whatever they have to do to go to school, because that's so important to them. So the beginning of that, I was at home. And then I went to Canada to do one of the Aurora Tea Garden movies, the one that they pulled the plug on. And we quarantined for 2 weeks. And then we got on-set protocols. Now, in Canada, they have it figured out, because everybody wears masks. Everybody socially distanced, has social distance. The makeup people not only wear masks, but they wear shields. The actors wear masks. Everybody is so respectful of those protocols that the numbers there have been quite a bit lower than what we've had. Now, they don't have the vaccines we have, but their numbers have been so much lower, because this is something that everybody is respecting and doing. And as soon as there's any kind of problem, they pull the plug on the whole thing. We never had that. I've taken 26 COVID tests, all of them negative. And it's funny, I've done 4 quarantines, 4 2-week quarantines, one of them in a hotel where I thought, I'm going to go crazy. I'm not going to see another human face for 2 weeks. So I'm going to make a little path in my room. And I made a little 70-step path. And what I decided to do is every day, I'm going to do between 11,000 and 13,000 steps. And I did. I mean, I was like a step away from a hamster wheel. I was doing anything I could to keep, because one of the things I learned from my mother, God bless her, my mother, I have three sisters, 2 nieces, well, more than that, 4 nieces. And one of the things that I will always be so in love with my mother for teaching us is the respect for the human body in terms of movement. Motion is the lotion. Motion is the lotion. It keeps everything lubricated. I mean, for a woman who had terrible rheumatoid arthritis and broke her leg or broke her hip the night before she was going to go on her first date after my father passed away, and where she was recovering from her hip surgeries and stuff, she put wheels on her walker so that she could still teach the cha-cha, because she did not want to stop for anything. She didn't want to stop moving. And it was only a leg amputation that kept her from teaching dancing. And it's so, women, my son, I got a Mother's Day card from him years ago when they were very little. My boys are 25 and 26 now. But when one of them was 7 years old, he wrote a Mother's Day card saying, my mother is like an octopus because she can do 8 things at once. And that's what we are. We're like we're octopi, that's what we do. We move, we nurture, we caregive, we take care of ourselves as much as we can. And sometimes we can't. A lot of times people are like upset because of what's happened during COVID. Maybe their self-care has kind of fallen by the wayside. You've got to find little ways to take care of yourself throughout the day. When I was 16 years old, before my father died even, I came up with a theory of life. And it's been my #1 theory in my life. And that is, the key to your life is how well you deal with plan B. Because plan A is what you hope for. Plan A is what you dream about. Plan A is what you prepare for, but plan B is what actually happens to you. And you can be dragged kicking and screaming to plan B, or you can say something like, oh, what's around this corner? Let me see. What can I get out of plan B? Let me tell you, this has been the plan B year. Every single step of the way has been plan B, no matter how you try to slice it. I mean, my plan B was not losing my parents. I didn't expect, but that's what happened. And I had to make an adjustment. My plan B was certainly not to marry 2 men that I didn't stay with, but hey, I got my 3rd and final, So you can be dragged kicking and screaming to plan B, or you can say, how can I make this work for me? And that's what this year has been almost more than anything else. How can I make this work for me? What can I do? And it's not too late to start. I mean, obviously, and as Anita said, we're not finished. Everybody can't just pack up and go home. There are still opportunities out there to do a little bit of a mind shift. I always feel like, here's your head. Maybe your problems are in there, but right here, right outside, those problems don't exist possibly. So how do you get outside your own head to do it? Or I think of a mayonnaise jar, and you unscrew it, and when it's off its rudders or whatever, you know what I'm talking about. When you can't get the lid on, sometimes you have to unscrew it and then rescrew it. So there's all these different things that we can do. And it's so much here. This is the epicenter of our lives. The way we think about ourselves, the way we relate to other people, the way we take in our food, the way we metabolize every situation that we go through. It's so important to make sure that this little epicenter is processing it in a certain way and making sure that you're getting the most out of it, because so many times people give up. So many times people say, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't want to be the best me, or I don't want to. And you know what? Every day, every single day is an experiment in the laboratory of life. And some days work and some days don't. But if you just start thinking that way, there's no such thing as a bad meal. There's no such thing as a bad experience. There's no such thing as a bad memory, because it's all part of the process. I have this unusual memory, as I said, and it's called HSAM, Highly Superior Autobiographical Memory. And I've been tested on this. They wired me, put me through an MRI, put like all kinds of wires. They put me in this MRI, asked me a bunch of questions. They see how the neural pathways fire up, and they took 300 measurements of my brain and the other people who have HSAM. And they found 9 areas 10 times larger than the normal brain. So we definitely have something that's unusual. But I also know that as one of 6 kids, and anybody from a big family, you know what that's like. You're part of a litter. You're like cats in a bag. How do I make myself how do I make myself stand out from the crowd? So I may have had an unusual memory as a child, but it's definitely something I have exercised my entire life. Definitely something as I fall asleep at night, I say, okay, what was I doing exactly a year ago today? What was I doing when I was exactly my son's age? Ages. Last night I was having trouble falling asleep because I kept thinking, I'm only going to talk a half an hour. I've got this whole big life I want to share with you guys. How do I do it? How do I truncate it in some way? Because man, I didn't even talk about Taxi and what that was like. Not really anyway. And so all those boyfriends too. No, but there's so much that I always want to share with people, and so much that I feel like, especially about memory, because here's a very sad statistic that I found out doing all this memory research. And because I'm part of the research is ongoing, I'm part of all these different studies, and now I'm in medical books. And I said to my brothers, yeah, I've already signed papers to give away, they can check my brain. And they were like, what? Someone's going to be going, hey, we got Nardo on the table. It's like, forget about it. It's like, no, but I have to do it. It's the middle child in me. I have to like contribute in whatever way I possibly can. And so this is what I always say about memory, and why it's important to maybe develop a stronger autobiographical memory. Because let's face it, everything you have been through is on your emotional hard drive. And it makes you behave in certain ways, whether or not you're even aware of it. You might meet somebody and go, damn, why do I like that person so much? Or, wow, I can't stand that person. What is that about? Or why that smell? What is that? Oh my gosh, that's my grandmother's house. Everything we've been through. I just happen to, and the other people who have HSAM, we just happen to have very unusual memories. We have unusual retrieval systems. So that's why, it's so important for us to exercise our brains. And let's face it, we've all gotten super lazy because of our phones. We don't even know sometimes our own phone number. Okay, so I'm always saying that there are 2 things about memory, right? There's 2 things. One of them is that everybody has what I call a primary track. It's like in the jigsaw puzzle of your life, what are the hard-edged pieces by which you can interlock your other memories to? Everybody remembers something especially well. And it could be anything from travel to places you've worked, to places you've lived, to your children's lives, to sports. Some guys will forget their wife's birthday, but they will remember a game from 30 years ago, who played, what they were wearing, what the score was, whatever. Okay, another big one, I've heard hairdos, I've heard food, I've heard clothes, I've even heard bats, like bats. Somebody is obsessed with bats and they remembered everything. They interlocked their life to their experiences with bats. And then on top of it, not only do you have a primary track, you also have a dominant sense. Everyone has a sight, sound, touch, taste, is a sight, sound, touch, taste, or smell person. Okay, everybody has a dominant track, a primary track and a dominant sense. And when you can figure out how to cross-connect your primary track and your dominant sense, you can figure out how you receive, retain, and then retrieve memories. Because that's all it is. We just happen to have an extraordinary retrieval system. Now, here's the thing. This was the sad statistic I was about to mention. Supposedly, everybody really only remembers 8 to 11. The average person remembers 8 to 11 events within any given year of their lives. Like if I said 2003 or 1997, or I said 1986, or I said 2016, most people would only remember 8 to 11 events within any given year. Whereas people with HSAM, we remember the criteria is 200 plus, and some people in the 99 percentile were like 365, 366 a year. Why is it even important to develop a better, stronger, autobiographical memory? This is how I always describe it. And then I'll stop in case anybody has a question. If all we ever do is we wake up, we live our lives, we turn off the light, we go to sleep. We wake up, we live our lives, we turn off the light, we go to sleep, and nothing has moved forward. Then what does it all mean? So by developing a better autobiographical memory, it's really our strongest line of defense against meaninglessness that we have. Because this way you can take the past, bring it to the present, and let it inform a better future. You can say, wait a minute, I think that's a red flag. When did I go through that before? Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute, I had a good experience here. What did I do that prepped myself for this? Oh, yeah, let me use that. Let me use that. You end up using your life. Your memory is your story. And the more you can preserve it and take care of it and develop it and honor it, the better off you're going to be. Okay, I'm sorry. I probably am way over time, but thank you so much for inviting me. I am humbled and honored to be with such fabulous people, women, men, all of you, and what a great event. And, you know, I dedicate all of this to all the fabulous people out there. Thank you so much.
That was fabulous.
Thank you. Thanks.
And you're right. I can remember one thing in 1986. My son was born. That's about it. So I don't
What
remember
day?
anything else. Yeah. March 5th. I do remember that.
Oh, March 5th?
Yeah.
1986?
1986.
Okay, so he was born on a Wednesday.
You're correct. That
I know what I was
remember.
doing on that day. Yeah.
Wow.
I
See,
know.
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's just there. It's just there. It's like somebody asked me my address.
Yeah, I can't remember my address back then.
Okay.
But,
Are there questions? Because I don't have glasses
there
on.
are. So I will
Oh,
help you with
okay.
those.
Oh, yeah, please.
So with no pre-existing diseases, if you had to pick one of your books for living a healthy lifestyle, which one would you recommend for somebody who's 55 and older?
I would definitely start with the one Total Health Makeover, because it's kind of like the basis and it tells you the journey that I took. See, I always believe that people are turkeys or wieners. They either can like try something and go cold turkey on it, or they can wean themselves, you know. So if there's a food that you know it doesn't agree with you, you can either like give it up for 3 weeks and see how you feel, or you can wean yourself off. So I think that's a nice little way of, yeah, I would pick that one.
Great. And then you have lived such an interesting life. What do you anticipate will be your next chapter?
Oh, I'm definitely going to do more Broadway. I'm going to do a sit-down tour. I said, oh, I feel like Celine Dion at Caesars. I'm going to do one at Bucks County and do my show. I'm doing more Aurora Tea Gardens. There's one on May 23rd. That's her wedding. I'm so excited. And we're on number 17. We did some 17. 16 will be on May 23rd. We're doing 25 at least. And I'm doing more movies. And if somebody mentioned the Hanukkah movie. Oh, where is she? She mentioned the Hanukkah movie. And so we're doing a sequel to that as well, because I did a Hanukkah movie for Lifetime and for Hallmark. And then I'm just going to be doing more movies, more things, more fabulous times with my husband, the 2 little kids, my sons who are thriving and doing well. So yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Do you have the ability to turn your mind off from remembering?
That's so funny. Michael says you have 2 switches, on, off. Yeah, it depends on what I'm in the middle. I think there's always a pilot light going, but yeah, it's kind of there. Like I'll be in the car and I'll hear, if I'm talking to my sister, I'll hear a song and I'll go like, when did I first hear that? When was the last time? Or if I'm like alone, I'll go like, oh, let me go through every time I ever heard that song, So it's like, but it's exercise for me. It's like meditation. People always say, do you meditate? And I always say just on dates and events and things like that. Yeah.
Great. And then any book suggestions for somebody who's struggling with anxiety and depression?
Books or movement. I think that's always really big. I think if you wanted to read any of my books, just sort of having a little bit of that, there's one called Wear Your Life Well, but I'm sure that there are many more clinical books. So it depends on, yeah.
And the last question is, and I'll just hold it up.
Okay.
What's the name of the book you wrote with your husband?
Here you go, guys. Changing Normal. Okay. I didn't even know how prophetic I was being, because we're going to have to change our normal after this. And we've had a whole changing normal year, Plan B, changing normal year. So it's like, we're not going to go back to normal. We need a reset. So some of the things I really feel like during this pandemic, this lockdown, everybody distills down to maybe the person that they really are, and you figure out what's important, what isn't important. So hopefully you can take some of the lessons, we can take some of the lessons we've all learned from this lockdown and take them to the next, next 20, 30, 40, 100 years of our lives. So yes, but anyway, that's it. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you,
so
guys.
much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody at home.
Yes. So we're actually going to raffle off 5 of these books we purchased, and Marilu has agreed to personalize them. So if you
course.
win the raffle, put your name in the text chat box as to what you'd like us to make, who you would like us to make it out to.
Yes. Okay.
So we're going to do that in
Do
just a
you want
moment.
me to stay up here or
Um,
leave? Or
Sure,
I can't
we
read
can do
anything
that
unless I get my
raffle right now.
glasses.
You want to do the raffle real quick?
Or what do you
There's
wanna do?
3 of
Sure,
these
we can do
books
that,
and
yes.
2 of
Is that okay? Can we do that with
Yeah, you
our
ready?
Zoom capabilities?
I know.
First
It's like
of
a
all,
whole new world.
I do want to say thank you so much to Marilu, just because, we have 2 different books. Okay.
Oh,
good.
yeah.
For her inspiring talk and her
Thank you.
tremendous enthusiasm and energy. It was
Thank you.
fabulous.
Thank you.
I was getting texts from my friends watching at home going, she's wonderful.
Oh, thank
So,
you.
we
Yeah. No,
so
my mother used to
appreciate
say,
it.
run around the block a couple of times. Get rid of some of that energy. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's good. Okay. So,
It's spinning.
okay, our magic
It's
wheel is
spinning.
spinning. So here is the other book we have.
Oh, yes.
What
Total
she
memory
talked about
makeover.
before was
First
total.
winner is Usha Ravel.
Oh, Usha Ravel.
Usha Ravel.
That's Dr. Ravel. Ooh, great.
Spinning again.
And you're gonna find out later, and I'll do this in a little
I
while,
think
or
they're
what
gonna
they want.
text us
Oh.
or put it in the chat box who
Okay.
they'd like it signed to.
Okay. You got
See if
it.
it all comes
Karen
together.
Burns.
I'm sorry, what?
Karen Burns.
Karen Burns is the next winner.
And can they decide which of the 2 they want, or we just sign?
Just have to
Okay,
choose
whatever.
one. Or they can put it in the chat box.
Okay.
I'll say that.
that. Jane Neri.
Jane Neri.
One of our nurses.
Oh, one of our little company nurses.
That's so
great.
cute. Look at how cute that is.
It's
Wow.
It's the magic of Zoom.
I know. I never saw that though. That's a first.
Number 4 is Michelle Katnick.
Michelle Katnick. That is my sister.
Ah, fix.
Who was at home cheering us with
Oh,
with the
thank
rosé
you.
before. So.
Oh,
All right, 5th winner is Catherine Girardi.
Catherine Girardi. She's another little company person. So how nice.
excellent. Well,
Very
thank you.
good. So for those of those people who just won the books, we have 2 here, Total Memory Makeover and Changing Normal. So you could just maybe put in a request. We'll see if we can do that. And also who you would like, if you want to address to yourself or someone else, and Marilu will sign them for you.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
We love you. We're so
Love
happy to
you.
have
Thank
had you
you.
today. I hope everybody feels so not only inspired, but energized by Marilu. She's just incredible. I feel like we all need to run around the block now. So, okay, we are now, it's time for our raffle drawing. So we're going to have a little drum roll. I just love the magic spinning wheel. We have 5 fabulous baskets. So we're going to just raffle those off one at a time. Tell me when we're ready to start.
Spinning the first one.
Okay, it's spinning now. The first one is for the shopping basket.
Cynthia Soma.
Cynthia Soma is the winner of the shop basket. Congratulations. Next up is our fun basket.
Catherine Girardi.
Catherine Girardi. Oh my gosh. It's your lucky day, Catherine. Next up is the fab basket.
Heather Burr.
And the winner of that is Heather Burr. And next up is the play basket.
Susan Stewart.
And that winner is Susan Stewart. And our final basket is Enjoy.
Debbie Benitez.
And the winner is Debbie Benitez. Is that? Is it-
I just heard her scream.
Oh, okay. I guess she's working down the hall. So congratulations to all our winners. We will be contacting you with the information about how to get your basket from the foundation. So congratulations to all who supported the raffle today also. Thank you. So I think we're about to close now from our virtual Power of Pink, which has been quite an experience. I never thought I would say that I'd rather be in front of a ballroom full of 500 women of the community, but I think it's less stressful than the virtual thing. But anyway, just want to thank all of our wonderful speakers today, Cathi Shultz, Lindsey Burrell, Dr. Sircar, who's here in her scrubs ready to hit the ground running again and get back to work, and the fabulous Marilu Henner, who just shared such a fabulous presentation with her energy and her delightful stories and her inspiration and a little bit of wisdom for all of us, I think. So, Lori.
So before we all sign off, we would love for you to put your cameras on. We're going to try to get a few screenshots of people in their pink, we hope, or just having fun supporting the Power of Pink. You can also, if you would like, take pictures and hashtag us at PLCM POP. So we would love for that, but if you'd all put your cameras on, I think we're going to try to catch a few screen grabs.
Once again, the magic of the virtual conference.
This will probably be the most difficult part of everything we do today. We're almost there. We're so close. Is it coming up? Oh, good. Oh, good. Thank you to all of you. Again, we are so appreciated that you have all agreed to be part of our conference virtually today.
Oh my gosh, that's Peggy
Peggy
Lanigan.
Hi, Peggy.
Peggy.
Marilyn. Oh, in her pink shawl. Thank you.
Marilyn Prindle, the creator of those fabulous raffle baskets.
Yes. Dory. Hello, Dory.
Love your pink shawl.
Yes.
How many?
How many people were online total? Almost 250. Hi, Laura. Almost 250. It's so nice to see people that we can't see in the audience, but now you're showing up on camera. So are you, are we getting a? They're doing it. Okay, we're getting it. So hello, beautiful. Nice color.
I love seeing everyone in their
I
pink.
know, it's
That's one
very
thing we
fun.
love when we're in the ballroom is everyone's in pink. But today we can only get a few little flashes of it, but I'm sure everyone was wearing pink
All
at
right.
home.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Lori and I just are so thrilled that we were able to bring this to you virtually. And also virtually, our boutique is open all for the next 2 weeks, actually, if you'd like to do a little more shopping. And please do that. So you can find all of that on our website. And we just want to thank you very much for joining us for the Power of Pink today. And we just like to say, keep the spirit of pink alive in your lives. And everybody have a good weekend. We hope we'll see you back here in the ballroom next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.